Welcome everyone, it's Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. I have a lot of videos to get through these next few days, catching up on many things. So I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. Very quick topic around VeChain. And then of course we will go into the chart as well, as there's some really interesting price points that I'm personally after. We'll go through that in more detail. Before we go further, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel, a multitude. And I don't underestimate this at all. A multitude of discussions and topics to look through here. Loads of different projects and assets that we cover as well. And as I mentioned before, don't forget to keep an eye on the YouTube Shorts. I try and do this at least once a day, sometimes hopefully a couple times a day. So just really quick updates of news across the crypto sphere and indeed sometimes in finance in general. Of course, there's some really interesting topics more recently as well. UDPN, we'll do a big video on that in the coming days, linking up a load of really cool chains that we not only just cover on this channel, but of course I'm sure you hold many of those chain tokens in general. And of course the interview videos, don't forget to check those out as well. The most recent one with Philippe from Swipelux in relation to on-ramping and fiat, etc., bridging Web 2 and Web 3. Guys, let's go and talk about VeChain quickly. So just before going to this little storyline here in this article from VeChain Official, which was literally released within the last 24 hours, VeChain has been something I've been holding since around 2020, latter stages of 2020. So pretty much, really, around the kind of price points that we see today. And as I said, we'll go into that a bit more detail shortly. But when we had that uprise in 2021 and then now the downfall, like with the rest of the market, I think there's some really good positions to look at. But one of the main reasons I was so interested in VeChain, particularly back in 2020, when it's a huge focus on a multitude of different areas, but one huge focus, particularly in supply chain. And not just in terms of trying to improve supply chain management and things like this, but also the tracking and tracing, or the ability to do so with the likes of technology such as NFC or QR codes. And for us as consumers to really look into more detail about the things we are buying and seeing the sustainable and the environmental factors behind these products or produce that are coming over in the multitude of different logistical formats, whether it be shipping, flight, train, etc. Yes, trains are still very imperative for the logistical pathways of produce and materials and consumable items coming back and forth from exporters and importers respectively. And being down by the coast, I see cargo ships all day, every day. It's quite amazing, really. And that's just in Portsmouth. I also see in the slight distance the ones going around to Southampton. It's incredible. If you go and look at like marine traffic apps or online, it's unbelievable how many shipments are going on all day, every day. And even like, the Suez Canal in Egypt, there's that big problem like last year with the big issue with the boat turning and blocking the canal. If you go on the map, I couldn't believe it. The map is just mental how many shipments are going through that small channel. It's unbelievable. But that's helping make the world go round. And there's a huge amount of value in this area, not just from the supply management perspective. And what I mean is the kind of like the software or the hardware that's built behind orchestrating these things, whether it be forecasting, the processing of things, customs, etc. The whole entire spectrum of general trade around the world is phenomenal. We've done a multitude of videos on that, but this whole market particularly is around like $18 trillion just from this area in particular. Absolutely huge. And VeChain will definitely have a big part to play in this. I was going to pick this out. This is a Brazilian company, very much around a flagship store, and they do like loads of different merchandise, sporting merchandise. Particularly, I think it's wrestling. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but MMA is kind of like the fighting kind of thing, isn't it? Like UFC. Forgive my ignorance on that side of things, but generally speaking, it not only confirms and validates the produce that you are buying or the products and merchandise that you're buying, but also you can see a whole entire history spectrum of where this has come from. Is it sustainable? All of this. And why is that important? Well, as a consumer, I'd like to think majority of us, yes, we're not 100% perfect. I'm not, but I like to try and recycle as much as possible. I'm very observant about plastic purchasing or things that have plastic on them. I try and avoid those kind of things and just general waste overall. So I think morally a lot more people are awake to that. In fact, I did a dissertation back at university. My dissertation was around the environmental impacts, particularly in the mobile phone industry. And this was around about, if not just before, the WEEE initiatives came in for like the recycling of electronics, etc. And I thought it was a big topic because actually, like within marketing, I kind of went down the spectrum that this is going to be a huge thing in the future. And I was not necessarily laughed at. Like, I think my lecturer at the time, to be fair, like found it an interesting topic, but everyone was like, what on earth are you writing about that for? And I was like, well, I find it interesting. It's a passion of mine, the environment, etc. Has been since I was younger, to be honest. And I've been on a multitude of like climate action certification courses and things like this. It's really, really important. Whether we believe in the climate media outlets at the moment remains to be seen, but the main thing here is that this whole compliance around sociability, governance, environmental aspects have been around for a long time. In fact, some people may remember the CSR abbreviation. I think it's corporate social responsibility, both from a humanity perspective and colleague perspective and environmental. But that is transformed, certainly under the World Economic Forum's leadership and the UN initiatives of the ESG. And it's very heavy because now companies can potentially be fined over these next 5-10 years for not reaching these targets or applying to them. So particularly in the merchandise markets, we were talking about clothing and things, it's actually even more imperative because we're potentially looking at future wastage of, you know, things going back into waste or into our washing machines, plastic, etc., blah, blah, blah. But also, where are these manufactured? Who's manufacturing them? Is it sustainable? Both from a logistical side of things, but also payments, you know, are people getting paid, you know, equality benefits, etc. And it should all be integrated within blockchain over these coming years. So I think we'll have even more of a moral stance in the sense, oh, I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy that these people have been paid this amount or this, that, and the other, and therefore I choose not to buy this product. So there is a big marketing terminology around this. And that's, again, going back to my dissertation, I don't know, what's that, 12 years ago? Something like that, graduation. There is a big part, I feel, about the marketing of it. And there's two stances. There's the marketing to use it as a PR initiative. Let's not beat around the bush. Ultimately, ESG and social and environmental corporation aspects, and in general, the climate change aspect is a huge PR initiative. And you want to try and adhere to that as much as possible and showcase that because more and more people are conscious than ever before. And then, of course, on the other flip side, outside of the marketing, is actually, hopefully, people want to be more conscious about this in general, both from a business and a personal perspective. And it sheds light on the sense that, are we actually having an equal world? And are we doing the best, or at least trying to do the best we can on these different stances? So for me, and with my background career-wise in IoT and AI, so the Internet of Things and obviously artificial intelligence are the longer versions of those abbreviations. It's no secret in my videos, I talk about this a lot. And I think with the integration of blockchain DLT technology and smart contract and the ability for transparency, verification, processing, you've not only just got the logistical side formulating, which VeChain is predominant in, to be honest, in my opinion, and there are others. We'll be doing some new intro videos of a couple of companies that I've met over the last few weeks in different events that are really heavily involved in this area as well. And the market value, as I said, $18 trillion just in this particular area is absolutely gigantic. It's a huge pie to break down, and blockchain is definitely going to be starting to lead the way a lot with the integration of these other factors coming in, as I said, IoT and AI. So VeChain being ahead of this game essentially for many years, and particularly with the fact that they have been focused specifically on these kind of areas, really puts them in a good stance. So when we come to talk about the price in a minute, we can start evaluating not just general retail investing, like market tractions and trends. We can also understand a bit more about the market valuation and trying to pinpoint actually when utility is really coming into fruition now and the real world application of this, it can really have a substantial gain and opportunity here. So I was right, UFC, so I should have read the article completely properly, to be honest. But yes, it's very much one of another great interesting case studies of that whole logistical process and that flow, that pathway of product, merchandise, consumables back and forth between import and export, A to Z routes when they come to us as when we buy them. what we can actually get out of this. So a lot of the other things, just removing things like potential fraudulent aspects to it, that authenticity aspect of it, the NFC tags or the QR codes being represented by the officiation of where they have come from. Is this a legitimate produce? Because the amount of fake things out there are absolutely obscene. So again, from that fraudulent aspect, we're talking about like multi millions of dollars, hundreds of billion dollars of sometimes in the fraudulent activity that goes on worldwide. Counterfeiting, sorry, should have used that word before. Counterfeiting is a huge problem and a dark area which can be avoided, or if not eradicated, with these technological advancements. So it's a bit of a weird story, but it does definitely incorporate the fundamentals of VeChain as a company and a project and a technology, what they're doing, and the integration of all of this moving forward. So you can start kind of using different examples in your mind as to, okay, I get this. I can now apply that method to everything that I buy or see being transported across the world. It's a really interesting topic, and it's definitely something I would suggest and recommend to just do a bit more research yourselves around trade finance or the trade in general and supply chain, all these things. And then you can start going, okay, what are the problems of this, which we have covered in previous videos, and see how these elements, these factors can really pull together. I did an interesting video of IOTA the other day, which was this one here, the correlation of direct cyclic graph, or DAG, 5G, AI, IoT and blockchain. Have a read of that, and it will maybe hopefully give an even better understanding of where I'm coming from with this, not just from supply chain, but things like digital identities, all the algorithms of buying, purchasing power, everything. It's a humongous opportunity to learn right now, to start accommodating what am I actually investing in, which is what I always do, and seeing how that application can be applied in the future and the now. And it is definitely progressing significantly. So have a think about that, guys. Have a view of those yourselves and research yourselves in those particular markets and areas. It's really fascinating. In the meantime, let's jump into the VeChain price. Obviously, VET on the exchange. This is pulling in from Bitfinex. To be honest, there's so many different ones, but this one's one of the ones that shows the longest patterns. Goes all the way back to 2018, pretty much around its launch time. So as I said earlier, I was getting into VeChain relatively later than I anticipated. I think I did get some batches just under the dollar mark. VeChain was one that I picked up through the channel Cheeky Crypto. So Nick and Chris, they're really good guys, obviously. And back then, they kept me sane through the pandemic. And then I started learning a lot more about blockchain in general with my diploma in blockchain cryptography and my application of AI, IoT. And then I understood what blockchain was. And I started picturing this in my head as to where this was going. So yeah, I was doing dabbling of the VeChain. I remember having a big hoo-ha at the time because Coinbase didn't have VeChain, and I was on Coinbase and I was like getting infuriated that they didn't have certain tokens. So I think I just started going into other exchanges like Binance, and I get most of them now through KuCoins because Binance is a bit weird here with the UK banks, and KuCoins is just easy because I can just buy stuff directly with my debit card or whatever, my Visa card. Anyway, waffling on, the point being is that the price point right now today at around about, as of recording, 0.018 or 1.8 cents is very much in line with where I was getting it in 2020. Now, you guys out there might have your own different stories. You might have been buying it before, you might have been buying it after, you might have been buying it at the higher regions and thought, oh no, it's come all the way back down, I've lost a lot of money, do I sell it, do I buy it? Well, that's all down to your own risk management and opportunities in your minds to think what you should and shouldn't do about that. My anticipation in my opinions and thoughts is that if I was buying at these higher areas, which to be honest, as the upload went, I wouldn't say I was FOMOing, and I was just really fascinated by the uproar and uprise of many assets in that market trend of 2021. I was buying at like 15 cents or so. And of course, we peaked out up here at 27, 28 cents. So first and foremost, guys, that gives us a really big, interesting representation in the sense that our existing current price points that we are seeing, in fact, can give us a really good upward momentum moving forward. So when we go back to that mention of what the application of VeChain is and where that market of $18 trillion to go, it's a bit difficult to kind of like comprehend that into a full market valuation. But you see these previous drawings are showed here. Currently, from its current price point up to that 30 odd 27 cent mark, 1,343% gains, guys. Now, I think we're going to fly past this, in all honesty. The next marker up on the fib level on the larger spectrum, the long-term spectrum, is up to this marker here, around 44 cents. Now, I think that's very realistic as a minimum. And that's 2,279% gains, guys, off the current price points. I'll go into the macro detail in a second because I'm looking out for something myself, and whether that is something that's applicable to others will remain to be seen. But again, there is argument from a lot of people that with the traction of real world application and where VeChain will be in this terms of its solidification of confidence from investors and people holding this token, we could see significant gains towards that dollar mark. I'm very conservative always, and I do definitely anticipate that we can hit this 44-45 cent marker on the long-term fib retracement. 73 is definitely possible. Beyond that, I would be amazed, absolutely amazed. By 2030, I can totally accept this area of interest around $1 or so. And I definitely would love to see that. I think there's a great opportunity in this next bull run, whether it be 2024 into 2025 or around that area, to see that fluctuating pattern, to take advantage of that and still have that long-term mentality in VeChain to say, yes, I'm going to take profits. Yes, I'm going to bank some of that, but I'm going to keep a lot of it back for the downward trend after that 25 bull run comes to fruition, like we saw in 2021, and then start scaling it back into the lower regions for that humongous opportunity back in 2030 and beyond. We'll see how that plays out. But yes, absolutely. Of course, it's possible in the next bull runs to get to that dollar. And I think with a lot more mass adoption, the fact that like companies like PayPal getting involved with the ability for us to get even more easy access to crypto, I have no doubts that it could definitely get to that area. But my conservative mindset is these areas of interest for gains. So now we've looked at a bit more around that detail, and let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree, or you think I'm going absolute loop and it's even higher, or it's not even going to get that high. Do let me know. There is no right and wrong answer unless you can back it with some interesting data or at least some theory behind it. That would be great. But yes, this current price point of 1.8, I'm still waiting and I still have got limit orders around these sort of like 1.5, 1.47 cent marks. And it just coordinates with this macro level fib retracement and one of the medium term ones as well, taking one of the recent high points and some of the lower, or the ultimate low point back down here, of course, and giving me a spectrum of areas of interest. You see it's sideways trading at the moment. It's floating on around about this 1.8 cent mark. If that fails, of course, it could trigger down to the 1.7 cent and then ultimately down to 1.5. So I'm hoping that still happens. I was doing a bit of calculation earlier. It's not very difficult, to be honest, because I was using like rounded numbers, but I just get muddled with things sometimes. So I just put in this kind of like format that, okay, let's say that I was investing, for argument's sake, this is totally like a random number in this sense, just for the ease of it, really, is if I was buying at this roundabout 2 cent mark and I was investing, say, like $100, for example. Let's use the bigger number, 1,000, just for argument's sake, to give you a bit of an ideology around this. Now, arguably, from a rounded perspective, some people or most people look at like the dollar as a marker, right? To say, okay, I'm buying at 2 cents. If I sell for $1, I know for a fact that whatever my unit number is, when that dollar hits, I'm going to get $1 per one, and you can kind of argue that. So if I had that instance that I've never been in VeChain before and I bought it today around about, let's just round it to 2 cents, I would have, say, 50,000 tokens-ish with that $1,000 investment. And I sat there the other day, and sometimes I think like, oh, is the 0.5% really worth it? I mean, I can think it is when you're looking at the larger scales, and no matter what amount you're actually putting in. But when you look at the larger spectrum, if I'm buying at $1,000 worth at the 1.5 cent mark, I'm going to get 66,000. I think it's like silly actually, it's recurring, 66,666 and then whatever. But yeah, essentially 66,000, just call it that for now. So it's already an extra 16,000 dollars that could be potentially one extra gain if it gets to that dollar, obviously. So you start seeing actually that 0.5% in the long-term pattern does make a huge financial difference. But of course, in the short terms areas, or if you're playing around with those 30 cents, 60 cent markers as we're going along, of course, it's still going to see significant gains between those two. But it's quite a mental blocker in my head sometimes where I'm like, oh, is there really much difference between 0.5% in that grand scheme of things. Am I that bothered? Because my average purchase price of VeChain when I look at CoinMarketCap with all my transactions I've done is around 7.6 cents. So I'm still in the gain in the sense that I'm buying at 2 cents or 1.5 cents. And I'm throwing that out there, guys, just as thinking processes for you guys out there, whether you're new to VeChain or any other asset in general, to have those kind of concepts and thought processes in your head. It really helps me, and it has definitely helped me over the last few years to think in this way, that actually just sometimes waiting patiently to just obtain that 3 or 5 cent market reduction. If you're a long-time holder like me, it does make a big valuation difference. If you look at it in that spectrum and you are a long-term holder, to suggest that actually I'm going to play it out and wait out for those bigger financial numbers. In this instance, we're talking about the dollar here in VeChain, and you can apply that method and thought process to others, of course. But as I said, if you're a short-term trader and you're messing about with the day trades, weeklies, monthlies, etc., then of course it is going to variate accordingly, but still plenty of opportunity in those markers. So definitely have a think about all these things when you're thinking about your investments and what's your approach short-term and long-term, and what's really your end goals. And the other reason I'm bringing that to the importance of this kind of conversation is that I feel like now and certainly in the next 3 to 6 months are really good opportunities to start providing yourself with targets. Now, whether you do this via chart method or you're doing it manually in your head or you've written it down, doesn't matter. I think the main concept here is that knowing how much you've invested, your profit and loss, thresholds, but understanding that actually when we go into these upward and downward patterns, and I will do a comprehensive video on this in the coming months. I'm not going to do it right now because the market is still very low, and I still think there's like good opportunity at these lower regions. But there will come a point where we start seeing the very, very beginning of the bull cycle, and this is where you kind of done all your work now. Yes, of course, you might buy still at lower regions on the way up because you don't know where these patterns go, and we don't know definitively when a bull cycle starts, obviously, until we see specific data points. But the point being is that we can start, mapping our percentage gain areas. So like, I'm going to do it when I hit 25% or 50% or in between. Or indeed, rather than looking at percentages, where am I looking at the valuations of this? So I've been buying at 2 cents. Am I going to sell at 10, at 18, at 25? So you get my thought process, and that's why I thought it was an interesting topic and ideology around understanding the differences of buying at these lower stages, being more patient sometimes. Yes, of course, it could go flying and we might miss these areas. That's why dollar cost averaging is very important. But to get at these fluctuating areas and understanding that sometimes there's patience in waiting for that 3 or 5 cent dollar reduction, it makes a big difference long term. Hopefully it helps someone. I don't know. It helped me a lot. But from the aspect of that short-term, long-term trading perspective, I am waiting personally for that sort of 1.7 to 1.5 cent mark again for my bigger intake in VeChain. The 14 day is showing 59 and the 28 day at the bottom left here is showing 57. So in my mind, this is very high-end middle ground. So for me, I'm looking at that stability over the next few days and see where we get that fluctuating pattern downwards. Not really anticipating any huge amount announcements from VeChain to signify that we might see some massive upward trends or anything going on in the market that might suggest so as well, unless Bitcoin goes mental with ETFs, etc. I don't think we'll see that for a while yet. And certainly with the Bitcoin halving in April, I think timing is key. They know what they're doing. But that point aside, there is for sure an opportunity in these lower regions, I think, as well. Performance side on the right hand side here as well, VeChain's been very stable, and I think, again, going back to my point that when I was buying VeChain back in 2020 and I'm seeing this sideways action over a long period of time, look at this back from June, July, even the lower periods of 1.4 cents and the higher regions of around 2 cents, we haven't moved far away from this at all. We're going in between that level at the moment. And I drew these two orange lines in, if you remember, a few videos back for VeChain, to suggest that anything in this area, in my opinion, and certainly from my previous purchasing areas way back here in 2020, suggests that I'm in a good position here because I didn't take any advantage at all of that uprise in 2021. And I'm not going to make that mistake again. And I definitely want to be buying VeChain when I was in that 2021 period going, I wish I bought more when I had the opportunity in 2020. And here we are right now in these price points. Yes, of course, it was even lower back here before those markers in 2020, all the way back down here. Look at this, 0.0009. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But even at the 1 cent to 2 cent mark, I think it's a phenomenal steal. In fact, anything under 5 cents in my opinion. But back to my point about taking advantage of those lower areas, specifically if you're a long-term holder. Short-term, you guys probably got your own strategies, but I think it's really interesting to think about all these areas and thought processes. So that's very much where we are with VeChain at the moment, guys. I'm going to keep an eye out for any other developments and anything going on, of course. I said I'd keep this short, and I always do that, and it ends up being 25 minutes. So I'm really sorry about that, but hopefully you take this as positive that I'm very passionate about talking about all these kind of things, particularly very interesting topics. Not always ones that I hold. I do some videos on projects that I don't even hold at all. I'm here for you guys, so if there's anything that you want covering, different assets or different topics about each asset, just let me know. I know I've got a load of comments to reply to as well, a lot of questions still around other things. But yes, do check out the other video, guys. And of course, don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Massively appreciated. We are flying towards 12,000 subscribers. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for the support. It's really appreciated. And hopefully everyone's enjoying the content and information. Guys, I'm going to wrap that up there before everyone gets completely bored. We'll see you in the next VeChain video. Take care. Bye-bye.